We are here at the Olympic Velodrome here in London, the Lee Valley VeloPark, ready to preview the 105th Tour de France. The battle for the Maillot Jaune continues here in July. It starts on the 7th of July, and we are here to talk about the route, the stars, and what we think is going to be happening throughout July. So the race starts on the 7th of July in Noirmoutier-en-Lille in France, in the Vendée region. That's where our Grand Départ will be happening, and it'll be ending on the Champs-Élysées as usual. We have a couple big contenders lining up in Noirmoutier-en-Lille. Biggest of all is the reigning champion, the man who's going to be wearing the number 1 dossard, and that is Chris Froome. The new Giro d'Italia champion, the Vuelta España champion as well. He has a big chance of winning this Tour de France and making it 5. What do you think, Will?
Well, obviously there's a lot of controversy surrounding him at the moment with the doping allegations that he's got coming on. We mentioned on our Instagram actually the comment from Bernard Hinault, which even caused some controversy on our account, that Bernard Hinault suggested that the riders should boycott the Grand Départ if Chris Froome is on that start line. But of course, these are the things that are always going to come with being the world's leading rider. The same thing happens to Sagan. When we talked about this in the classics, where people don't want to work with him. This is always going to happen when you're at the top of the game. People want to find a reason why you shouldn't be there. So he's got a big challenge ahead of him, whether or not he is at the start or not. But if he is there, he's obviously going to be the man to beat.
Of course, and I think Froome as well coming into this with a really, really strong Sky team. Even just looking at it, he has the likes of Bernal helping him, who's a star in his own right. I think he could go for the white jersey if he wasn't riding for Sky. You have the new Polish road race champion, Michał Kwiatkowski. You also have Poels as well from the Netherlands. He helped him out at the Giro. He might be a bit fatigued, but they are fantastic teammates. They've worked together on almost all his GT victories, especially since Poels moved to the team. I think it's a good sign Sky could win. I really hope they don't. And I think the team that we're going to see shaking things up has to be Movistar, coming in with their 3-pronged attack. So you have Mikel Landa, Valverde and Quintana. Interesting pick for them. They also have Marc Soler. He's the rider I'm really looking forward to seeing in the race. He could go for the white jersey himself. But 3 leaders, is that a problem or is that a gift for the team?
I think it's personally put them in a really great place. It's a bit like I believe it will be a bit like how Quick-Step operate in the classics, where they'll be able to send 100%. A rider up the road. If they survive, good, then they've got a rider up the road. If they don't survive, they've got another 2 to send up the road. And that puts Sky in a very hard position as to whether or not they do reel in the breakaways that are out, because there may be a Movistar rider out there who's a challenge, and they're going to really have to evaluate who they want to bring in and who they don't want to bring in, how much time they want to give them. So I think Movistar are in a really great position with 3 strong riders who any single one of them could be in with a chance to win the yellow jersey. So then this means that layer of mystery can remain. They've not stated outright who's going to be their leader, which I think is a good thing.
100%, and I think Sky have an obvious hierarchy that they're working for Froome. He's the number 1 rider. Then you have Poels as well, maybe a number 2, or Bernal. But I think with Movistar, they come in with a 2-tier system. You have the 3 big guys, then you have the likes of Amador and Soler, who are kind of on that 2nd tier. So it should be really interesting to see Movistar and what they do in this race. Outside of those 2 clear teams, you have Tom Dumoulin from Sunweb, who have he has a good chance, but it was a last-minute decision. He says he's more fresh and more focused on the Tour de France, coming in as former Giro d'Italia champion. This route very similar to the one that he took a Giro victory in back in 2017. Long TT towards the end, and not many TTs in between. However, he has just ridden the Giro. Same with Froome. I think that will take a lot out of them.
I think also mentally it's got to be, the Giro had to be hard for Dumoulin because he was consistently second throughout Yates's domination in the first 2 weeks of the Giro, and then when you see a Maglia Rosa get dropped, you expect the person in second to take over that reign, but instead he was leapfrogged. So I think mentally that's got to have had an impact on him, knowing that he was so close to getting a second Giro title. So I think that could mean he comes into the Tour de France really fighting, really wanting to win a second Grand Tour, but also there is the fact he's just not all that long ago. He's rode for 21 stages in Italy. But yeah, there is a long time trial. It's a challenging one. It suits him. But I don't know if there's enough time trialling to really push him ahead in a race like this, where it's not as challenging in terms of endurance as the Giro.
Yeah, but I remember Sunweb are now the world team time trial champions, of course, and they'll have an advantage on some of the other teams, Movistar especially, who've usually struggle in TTTs outside of Spain. But I think Dumoulin and his team, you have Wilco Kelderman, a fantastic rider who almost got a podium place back at the Vuelta a España, and you also have some other riders, Søren Kragh Andersen, really good wildcard pick, really good performance with 2 stage wins at Suisse, and you also have the likes of Matthews in the sprint. That balance of power in the team, it's going to be really interesting because they have someone going for the maillot vert, then you have someone going for the maillot jaune, so it's going to be really interesting to see who really has the main focus of the team. Will it be Dumoulin or will it be Matthews?
I think it's hard when a team has a split focus. You don't often see it paying off. I'm trying to think of a time when I have seen it and it's worked, but the only time I can think of recently really was Tinkoff when they had Sagan and
yeah, I'm just thinking 2012 Tour de France. Bradley Wiggins won the overalls, Cavendish won 3 stages.
He didn't win the green jersey though.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, I think you can't be too set on going straight for GC, being convinced you've got a chance of winning. I think with someone like Dumoulin, you've come out of a Grand Tour. Yes, Froome has done the same, but I think you've got to be willing to just be pragmatic, let the race run its course. If you're in a good position in the last week, then go for it. If you're not, then save yourself, look for the stage wins. That final time trial is definitely a time when he could win that stage and take away a stage win, which is a prestigious enough thing at the Tour de France, at any Grand Tour. So I think he is in a good position that he doesn't have to solely focus on the GC. Like if Froome didn't go for the GC, people would think less of him, whereas Dumoulin's in a good place where he's not got a lot of pressure on him. He can stay open-minded.
Richie Porte as well, strong in the TTs. He just won Suisse with some considerable margin as well over the likes of Quintana and such. I think he comes into it with a really good chance as well. I've always doubted Porte though. I just think Richie Porte's not a GT rider. Richie Porte is a 1 week rider who could probably win a mountain stage at Tour de France, and he needs to stop believing that he can win the Tour de France, because I don't think he can. I think what he should do is go for stage wins. I don't think he's ever taken a solo GT stage win, you know?
I can't think of one.
And I think he easily could on a mountain stage, but he just has this mentality of I can still win a GT, I can still win a GT, but he has this Richie Porte effect where he will crack at some point. He comes into it with a very similar team to last year's. He had the likes of Damiano Caruso and TJ van Garderen, but I think the star of that team, the man who's going to come out with it with the most success, is Greg van Avermaet.
Yeah, I think definitely he's always one to watch. He always likes to make a race more exciting. I think he'll definitely be one to watch. And on the Richie Porte side of things as well, I think it's the recovery aspects of these Grand Tours that he struggles with, and there are plenty of opportunities in the first week where he could be taking these stage wins and he's trying not to. And I think, yeah, like you said, he's just got to be more open-minded and step back and say, look, is this really for me? Of course, you can never say never. We saw Chris Horner win the Vuelta a España.
Yes.
That was a bit of a shock to all of us, I think. But it's just, especially in something like the Tour de France at the moment, which appears to be so star-studded, it appears to be the main focus of a lot of riders' seasons.
Yeah. Adam Yates, he says that he's in really good stead to do well in this Tour de France. He's done well in the past, almost took that maillot jaune after that Ventoux crisis of 2016. But this year, he comes in with a really strong team. You had the likes of Nieve coming in. I think one of the big underdogs you should look out for, Daryl Impey as well. He's going to be a fantastic teammate and possibly a maillot jaune taker, especially after that Triple T and a couple hill stages, a couple sprints. I think Daryl Impey is really a man to look out for. If you want to put your bet on someone who's going to take the leader's jersey at this race, Daryl Impey's your man, I think.
I think definitely that team time trial will be a focus for Orica. We've always seen them do well. Oh, sorry, if from Mitchelton, Scott, their new name. We've always seen them perform well at Grand Tour team time trials. You mentioned earlier that somewhere with the current world team time trial champions, but actually what we see from Mitchelton is they perform well in the Grand Tour. They almost bring a team that will perform in these. We've seen them take leaders' jerseys purely through focusing on an opening team time trial.
They have half a team that's very time trial oriented. You have Mickey Hepburn, you have like Durbridge, I think, as well, and a couple other people that are really time trial heavy based. So it seems like a no-brainer that they have a really good shout at taking that jersey. Especially, it's kind of like 2013 in the way that there's a Triple T early on in the race. After a couple sprint stages, Simon Gerrans, if you remember, held on to that leader's jersey back then.
I think that will be pivotal for Adam Yates because it will put him in a good position if they do succeed in winning or gaining significant time gaps on their rivals in that. But I think one thing we've always seen with Mitchelton through the years is that they don't seem to be able to finish a Grand Tour, much like a bit like Richie Porte, except we've seen it with Chavez, we've seen it with Simon Yates this year. They seem to have the ability to power through for about 2 weeks, maybe more,
and then they lose steam.
Drop it just off the end. It's almost like they'd only train for 19 of the 21 stages because it seems to be just that end point, they all drop off. And I think, well, Adam Yates particularly, this will hit home. His brother has just had that exact thing happen to him. He dominated the Giro for much of it and then lost out and ended up finishing behind his own teammate, who was supposedly supporting him. So I think Adam Yates will know that's a risk. He won't want to blow himself out, but I don't know if that will make him too safe. I think that's the risk that he will put himself in, is that if he sits back too often, he won't get the opportunities that he should have and won't be able to show if he is dominant or not.
So Vincenzo Nibali is another rider coming into this race with a lot of expectations. He's skipped a lot of the pre-races, or been there, not done well, 24th in Dauphiné, for example. But he did the same in 2014, where he was obviously the strongest rider. He has a strong team behind him. He has a couple riders. I think Pozzovivo is actually going to the Tour de France as well. Sure. And I also think there's some other people. There's Aguirre brothers as well. They'll be going there. They have a couple sprinters too. So Nibali, what are his chances?
Well, I think he's in a good place. Although I know sandbagging doesn't tend to be deliberate in cycling. You don't normally tend to underperform at races because there is prize money on offer. But
yeah,
I think he's in a good place because people look at this and say, well, he's off form. If he goes out front, we don't really need to be worried about him. And that means if he has been training hard in the background ready and he's on top form for this race, he could be a real threat. If he slips away, he may be quite a hard thing for the SkyTrain to bring back in. We have seen it occasionally where the SkyTrain breaks. It happened for the first half of the Giro, really.
Yes.
Froome wasn't strong enough to keep up. And if you can break the SkyTrain, you really do put them under threat. I think that's what we need to make this race exciting, because for me personally, we haven't had an exciting Tour de France since Schleck versus Contador, really. And effectively what we need is someone to push the SkyTrain, break the SkyTrain, and do what they did at the Giro, because to me the Giro is the first time I've seen a Grand Tour where Sky have been fully competing and at the front that's been exciting.
100%. I think for that, but the Giro is a different beast, and it's the same for Nibali. He could tame that beast in 2016. Can he do the same this year? I don't know. Like in 2016, it's an easier version of a normal route potentially, and I think this Tour de France route's kind of like a Giro route, I feel. But hey, there are lots of downhill finishes. Just looking at my notes, Le Gomponnard, which is stage 10, that's downhill. There are a couple other downhill stages. Nibali's undoubtedly one of the best descenders in the world, and I think these kind of finishes will really help him.
Yeah, I think if he can escape over a summit, if he can be out front, there's no way anyone will be able to reel him back in. You'd really struggle to reel. He knows how to shift his body weight and get around these corners more efficiently than anyone else. And that means if there's a downhill run in and he's the first one over the summit, there's a strong chance he will be the first one to the finish line.
100%.
He's not one of these riders who's scared to descend. He will happily go for it. I think one thing we may see this year is Richie Porte may pull back on the descent after what happened to him last year at the Tour de France.
I actually forgot about that. Yes, 100%. Because Porte, who knows if it's shaking him up. I know Dan Martin, it's kind of shaken him up, but because Dan Martin was the unfortunate victim.
I mean, Dan Martin finished the Tour de France with a broken back.
Yeah,
that
insane.
is pretty incredible.
Dan Martin this year, I don't know about his chances. Third at Dauphiné, I think. It's okay.
Against a 1 week stage race.
And Dan Martin's not a great GC rider. If we're talking about other shots, my big outsider is Primož Roglič. I've been saying that Primož Roglič could do well for years. Last year, I was so certain he was going to win it because I thought, wow, this is the year Froome doesn't win, Roglic is going to win. This year, Roglic has a fantastic chance. Unlike last year, where I kind of connected the dots between his podiums in these kind of stage races. This year, he's won those stage races. He's won Slovenia, where he beat EWAN, who's a big favourite coming into this race, and then also in Pays Vasco as well. Massive races. 2 really legitimate races, and I think Primož Roglic really comes into this with a good chance. Maybe not enough TT time, which is ideal for him. He's a fantastic time trialist, and his Lotto NL team's not the best at triple Ts, but he comes into it as absolute leader, I think, this time. No Bennett this year. What do you think about Roglic?
Well, I think, again, he's one of these riders who could benefit from a sort of conglomerate of all the teams working together against Sky, because if they do manage to break the Sky train, which is my emphasis at the moment, then he could be one of the riders who slips away unnoticed. And then as he climbs up the GC, he's the one who's got the legs, because he's the one who's been pushing the pace at the front of the race. And if he is there, he could win. Like we mentioned earlier, you can never say never. Chris Horner won a GT completely out of the blue, and it could easily be Primož Roglic do the same.
Yeah, Roglic is a really good outsider, I'd say. Place your bets, guys.
We've mentioned a lot about the route this year, so if we break it down into what it's made up of, its DNA, it's 8 flat stages, 5 hilly stages, 6 mountain stages, of which 3 of them are summit finishes, 1 individual time trial and 1 team time trial.
Yeah, I'm shocked by the lack of summit finishes again, because last year's race was quite underwhelming because of the lack of summit finishes. But this year, it's slightly different. A lot of short stages. The one from last year, from Bastille Day, that one really stuck around. It's a 68 kilometer long stage. That's going to be a brilliant stage to watch. But first of all, the first couple of days, we're going to have potentially a new race leader every single day for about 5-6 days. That's a brilliant prospect.
I think the other thing that excites me about the opening week, I believe it's up to stage 9, there will be a specific sprint dedicated to giving out bonus seconds only. No sprint points. You will, first one across the line will gain 3 seconds, second 2 seconds, and third 1 second. Mm-hmm. Now, and this is something which is bizarre to me.
And they happen at about, because looking at the route, they happen about 25 kilometers out. So it's really going to put an extra emphasis on watching the final bit, and also sprinters battling for those seconds, because in this week we could have different sprinters in the lead. We start the race with 2 sprint stages, and they're so flat. They're really, really flat. The first stage potentially has the risk of wind, but the bonus second sprint and the final sprint happen away from the sea. And then we have that triple T as well, followed by a couple hilly stages. The most notable one probably being, I want to say there's a stage up to, I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Quimpe. And there are about 5 categorized climbs, including the last one. It's 1 kilometer at 5%, so that'd be an interesting finish. I think Flanavan or Sagan have a really good chance of getting it. This reminds me of 2015, where we kind of had a lot of sprint stages and hilly stages in that first week that were designed to give a new race leader every single day. Yeah,
and I think definitely Van Avermaet will be looking at these sort of bonus second sprints not far out from the finish as really crucial. With me, if I was in charge of a team, if I was plotting the strategy, I'd look at it and work out these sprinters will want to have the breakaway reeled in by that point, so they can mop up the seconds rather than having the breakaway do that. But then they're still 25 kilometres away from the finish. That's a long way to ride with no one out front. And someone like Greg Van Avermaet is the kind of person who will look at that and say, well, I could get out front and time trial away from them, well, not time trial, drive away from them like we've seen him do at many races, and possibly take stage wins on these sprint stages, because I think that might be why the organisers are putting them in. Obviously to shake up the race lead, but also because it excites the last bit of the race. You have the opportunity for attacks where the bunch is together, far away from the finish.
I think it's a fantastic idea, to be honest. I think it's what the Tour de France needs, because those last kind of 25 kilometres, sometimes you just tune into the last 5-10 kilometres and then you understand what's happening, but it just kind of spices up the race a bit, especially with this opening week as well.
I think definitely, and I think this will be like when they reintroduce bonus seconds. I think it will spread to the entirety of the race. But I don't know how they'd managed to work it on a mountain stage, but we'll have to see that, because I don't know where you could place it. You could place it halfway up the mountain, then it forces people to attack early on. But I think it's definitely a good prospect. It gives the Tour de France a unique selling point for once. It's not just the oldest, the most prestigious Grand Tour anymore. It's got this unique selling point. I think that's a good thing. They need to be taking steps forward rather than focusing on tradition.
Yes, and I think for hilly stages in the first week that could spice things up. You have the Mur de Bretagne, that stage. If you remember 2015, Alexis Vuillermoz ended up winning that stage. This is another brilliant stage that could really give us another stage winner. We could have the likes of Michal Kwiatkowski or Julien Alaphilippe potentially.
Vingels won Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Yeah, but I think the stage up to Quimper is more classic-y. The last 50 kilometers is about 5 climbs. It's really classic-like. It looks like Liège or Amstel. So that should be really interesting. And maybe we could have a couple of GC people falling backwards, like in 2016, if you remember, Port puncturing as well on the final couple hills of one of the first week stages.
I think also, talking about people falling back, we have to talk about the cobble stage. That was Froome's downfall in that Tour de France a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, 2014.
The one that Nibali won, which saw effectively every GT contender except Nibali crash out in some way, or
lose minutes. Constant lost about 2 minutes.
So I think the cobble stage, obviously Sky will have learned.
Yes.
They will try and perform. They've got Michal Kwiatkowski, who is a good rider to have on the cobbles as a domestique.
Yeah, and Geraint Thomas as well, who's a fantastic rider. He's won E3 in his own right, just like Thingy has as well. But Sky learned in 2015. It was a sunny day in 2015. They kind of had a bit of a pact in the peloton to kind of take it easy. So who knows what could happen. It could be really aggressive, or it could be quite easy. There are 11 sectors, longest of which 2.7 kilometers long. It includes the Mont-Saint-Pavel section, which is I think 5 stars from Paris-Roubaix. It should be really good, and I really hope it provides us with a Roubaix-esque stage. It comes a lot later in the race than years before. It comes before the first rest day. We finish next to the old velodrome in Roubaix. That's going to be a fantastic finish.
It will be good, and I think you mentioned the pack that was sort of in place in 2015, but I think now the situation Sky are in coming into this is going to be the continuous undertone throughout this, is that people don't want to work with Sky anymore. Sky have got this big negative vibe around them now. They always were accusations thrown around with no real evidence, but now teams won't want to work with Sky. If Sky say they want to take it easy, that's going to make teams want to push it harder. Teams want to break Sky. Teams want to prove that they're better than Froome.
So the kind of theme of this year is short stages. Stage 11 is another one from Albertville to La Rosière. A new climb for the race, La Rosière, and we have a couple big climbs. I think it's a summit finish, as is stage 12 up to Alpe d'Huez. Iconic climb, that one. And I think there's going to be a lot of focus on what's going to be happening on that stage. We got the Col de la Madeleine and Col de la Croix de Fer, both all category climbs, and then you have Alpe d'Huez. It's going to be a fantastic stage.
I think Alpe d'Huez always provides us with some excitement, and also I think the short stages is another sign that the Tour de France are trying to be the Grand Tour to take the steps forward, because now, as much as people won't want to accept it, and I get it's not fact, but I think it's pretty evident to us, people's attention spans are shortening. People don't want to sit down for 6-7 hours watching a long day. People want the excitement quickly, and that's why these 60-70 kilometre stages are absolutely thrilling to us. Stuff has to happen constantly. I think you struggle now to find people who would be willing to sit down and watch 200 kilometre stages. So it is good for the Tour de France to do this. I think they're taking their steps forward, and they're putting in these exciting stages with mountains all the way along and a summit finish. There is a lack of summit finishes. Ewan said it's disappointed him, it's disappointed me, but I think there'll still be excitement because the stages are being shortened.
Exactly. Stage 17, 65 kilometers long. We have 3 category 1s, which finishes on a Cat 1 climb. It's going to be a really interesting route. It's quite experimental for the race. We have a TT on stage 20. That's pretty usual, but there's a 10% 1 kilometer long climb in there, like there was in last year's Marseille time trial. But I think the overall thing is that the Tour de France is trying to spice things up and trying to experiment with what they can and can't do with a race route, and that's always brilliant to see. Okay, you ready? So, little problem. The camera ran out of battery, so we're now like multitasking with phones and such. But first of all, let's talk about who we think, just to close this video, who's going to win each jersey. So we have the green jersey, the polka dot jersey, white jersey, and of course the yellow jersey. So Will, kick us off. Who are your picks?
You just put me on the spot here. I don't actually know. Yellow jersey, as much as I don't want to say it, I think the chances are it probably will go Froome's way. He has got the team, he loves this race, I think he'll do that well. Green jersey again, I'm just going boring. I think Peter Sagan will win it again, barring he doesn't get disqualified. Can't promise anything. The white jersey, I'm going to go with Bob Jungels. I'm assuming that Egan Bernal is dropped too often, having worked for Froome to win that, so I'd go Bob Jungels. Polka dot jersey is always a hard one to predict, really, because it's about who will be in the break a lot, especially this year with not many summit finishes. So I'm going to go with someone who I think will drop out of GC and then go for it. So I would say Adam Yates.
Yeah. Wait, for white?
Polka dot.
Oh, for polka dot.
Bob Jungels for white.
Oh, yeah. That's a fair choice. Because last year we saw like Sabaki doing really well on that one. I think for me, green jersey, I think it's Sagan's in the bag. And then if Sagan doesn't win it, I think it will go to Matthews, potentially. But this year there are lots of sprint stages. I think Kittel's not in the best form, doesn't have the strongest team. They also have Zakarin. So I think it's most likely to go for Sagan. And then for polka dot, I think it will go to a slightly outside GC guy, as you said, to which I would respond with maybe, I don't know, actually, maybe Uran. I think Uran might get it, or Pierre Roland. But I think Landa also has a good shout, because I think Movistar will play the game of throwing Landa in the breakaway, like in the Giro 2017, where Landa got a stage win and also the polka dot jersey. And then for white jersey, I don't think it'll be Jungels. I think Jungels has a really good shout, but I don't know about him in the Tour de France because he hasn't really done it before properly. And they also have Julien Alaphilippe. But for me, I would say Bernal or Soler, to which I respond with Soler. There really aren't that many young people this year going into it. And then for the yellow jersey, I think it's Chris Froome for the taking. But I also think it could easily be Movistar's, or maybe it could be Roglic. But I think Roglic is a very, very outside pick.
About the other two steps of the podium.
Other two steps to the podium, so you have Froome, Roglic may get third at push, and then second place will be a Movistar rider. Movistar could have two on the podium, in the form of Quintana and Valverde, I think. Landa will be their wild card, who they play. But Valverde's a safe bet, always. And Quintana, I think, will be their leader. Because we saw it at Suisse, Quintana was the leader. So we'll see what happens, I think. I think this should be an interesting race, tactically. But who knows? It might be Froome. This is probably the best chance Froome has to lose it in a while.
Yeah, I think so. I think people are out to get him, which puts a lot of pressure on him. We said this when we were reviewing Paris-Roubaix. It's how well the people at the top of the game can deal with the pressure. We said it took Sagan a while to be able to deal with the fact that people wouldn't want to work with him. Froome now has got effectively the entire peloton and many cycling fans against him. It's something which is very black and white in dividing opinion. You either like him or you don't now. The fact he's had this positive result in his doping test has turned a lot of people against him. But yeah, I think he should probably survive it. This is his race. It's hard to deny that.
Yeah. A fifth Tour de France would be massive, I think. Because I think Froome's easily overshadowed a lot of the time. People forget about him. But anyway, that's where we draw this video to a close. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Here is some merchandise, which you can get as well in the background as well. That's a snapback. You can buy this soon, we hope. Before, maybe during the Tour de France, it depends. Hop into our Instagram @thechaingangcc, and there'll be a lot of information on there about merchandise and a lot, you know. And also stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of Tour de France news. A giveaway is on the way of Pro Cycling Match 2018, and yeah, generally just go hit up our social media. Yeah. So that's that. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and farewell.